Welcome to Piecemeal, a podcast hosted by the Emily Program. Piecemeal covers topics related to eating disorders, body image, and how society may influence our thinking. Please use your discretion when listening and speak with a therapist as needed. I'm your host, Jillian Lampert. I'm excited to have a past guest returning today. Katelyn Olmsted was on the podcast in early last year to talk about her book, Daily Dues of an Eating Disorder to Recovery, which was so cool. And today she's here to talk about her new book, The Recovery Click, which I'm super excited to hear about. Katelyn is an advocate, an author, and an all-around delightful ray of light as a human. She's the author of Daily Dues of an Eating Disorder to Recovery, which is published in late 2023, and the book, The Recovery Click. She lives with her family in Charlotte, North Carolina, is in her first year of college, and she is on a mission to help others in eating disorder recovery. Katelyn, welcome back. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you so much, and thank you for that intro. I'm excited to
We're
be
excited to
back.
have you. I'm super excited to talk to you about your new book. But first, let's set the stage for anyone who hasn't had the chance to listen to episode 90. That's Katelyn's other episode. If you haven't had a chance to listen to episode 90, let's give folks a little bit of background. Tell us a little bit about, the background of your eating disorder experience and recovery journey. Just set the stage for us.
Yeah, of course. So when I was 14 years old, I was diagnosed with anorexia. So it was my sophomore year of high school. I was navigating my parents separating, playing sports, it was post-COVID, so high school was really new for me, like being in person again. So a lot of scary changes, and I fell into bad habits, started leaning onto my eating disorder as kind of a comfort. I was later in February of my sophomore year sent to a treatment center where I worked on recovering and like body positivity and all about like food being fuel and that like I need food and it was really good for me and I honestly don't know where I'd be without treatment. It led me to now being a freshman in college, now having my second book coming out soon. Obviously, throughout that time and even now being in college, I've had my ups, I've had my downs, my moments, but recovery just has been a great process and I've been so happy that I've chose recovery. But that's just a little bit of kind of a background, sophomore in high school, diagnosed with anorexia, went to treatment for 3 months, and here I am, a freshman in college.
Awesome. That's fantastic. And of course, there's, complexity and a lot of your hard work along the way. But I want to highlight something you just said that you chose recovery. And I want to highlight that because we often will say to people like nobody chooses to have an eating disorder, right? If anybody's ever heard a myth that, people choose to have an eating disorder to cope or to control life or whatever, people don't choose to have an eating disorder, right? These are illnesses that some people get, unfortunately, and they're hard illnesses to have to manage. And you can't choose recovery. There's a lot of choice in recovery. Do you have a sense of how you were able to make that choice? What was helpful to you in making that choice to no, I'm going to do this?
I'm glad you said that because my second book, I list a lot of misunderstandings and myths around eating disorders and recovery. So it's great you touched on that. But in the recovery click, it was a lot about why people chose recovery. And it was great to see because there's no just one choice in choosing recovery. And like you said, no one chooses to have an eating disorder. It truly is like something that happens and it's a terrible thing that happens, but also choosing recovery and that process is so beautiful. So writing the recovery click, I was able to ask a bunch of people, okay, why did you choose recovery? What was that process like? And again, everyone's answers were so different and so beautiful. Choosing recovery can easily look like, okay, I'm going to choose recovery because I want to be healthy. I want to choose recovery because I want to have a good relationship with food, or I want to recover for my family or my pets. And it could also be something as simple as, this is going to be something I'm going to choose every single day. It's going to be gradual. And I want to find a new reason every single day to choose recovery. And in my early times in treatment, that's what I had to do. So I would wake up, I would journal, and I would write down one thing that was going to be like what I'm going to choose for recovery. So you could wake up and be like, today I'm going to choose it for my dog. And tomorrow I'm going to choose it because I'm done having a bad relationship with food. And I think that's what's so beautiful about recovery. And you can make it truly something beautiful. So while no one chooses to have an eating disorder, choosing recovery in those steps is just really beautiful. And to look on it back where I am now, it's great to see where I am. And it's also great to see the things I listed out and why I chose recovery. So yeah, it's a little bit about that.
That's awesome. That's so great. And that's what I really one of the things I loved about your first book, the sort of the daily do's of recovery. Like here's what I'm going to do today. Here's what I'm going to choose today. Here's how I'm going to frame this just for today. It doesn't have to be for the next how many ever years. It can just be for today or the next 10 minutes or the next hour. And I love that your first book was really like rooted in wanting to reflect what was helpful to you in your journey and what you heard from other people. And I know that when we talked in the first around your first book, you were really hoping to help others who felt maybe a little lost in their recovery just have a bit of a framework or have a way to think about how they could really support themselves. What was it like to have that first book out there in the world? What kind of feedback did you get? How was that for you?
It's honestly really crazy. For me, it's so weird because I don't even think about it of like, oh, publishing a book. It was just more of a way I could get my story out and hopefully help other people. So even now I will forget that I published a book or even like published a second book because for me, I just like always been so determined to want to help people and share my story. And I feel like since getting out of treatment, that's kind of in my life. Like I'll go on podcasts or I was in a magazine doing this, and it's just like, how can I get my story out? How can I help other people? So it's been really cool to kind of see that in a crazy process. But I wasn't expecting to publish a book. I kind of talked about that on the first podcast and also in my first book and my second book. But I just really wasn't thinking about, oh, I'm gonna publish a book about eating disorders and eating disorder recovery. I just truly think it was I had a story to tell and a gift to like help people and share my story. So it became a thing and I thankfully had a lot of great feedback. I had people from treatment or people that I didn't even know sending me messages or emails and talking about how the book helped them. And for me, that was really special because my mom and I always said, as long as we help just one person. And in my second book, I was like, if I help one person, even if that one person was me, because writing truly does help my recovery. And for me, it's been cool to see the messages and see the testimonies, and even like seeing the testimony within myself of writing this first book, now this second book, seeing how much I've grown, not only in recovery, but just how I write and being an author. And it's been cool to see how I've changed and how I've grown in recovery and life. And it's just been a cool experience. And I'm excited to see what other plans I have as far as writing and sharing my story.
That's so cool. So cool. I'm sure that you helped far more than that one person, but I also loved what you said about even if that one person is you, that what a gift to be able to help yourself to continue supporting your recovery and help others. I know that you are helping others. And now you have a second book that's going to go out into the world that's called The Recovery Click. So tell us about that book. What is that? What's in that book? What motivated you to write it? Sort of first of all, I know it's part of your sort of evolution of your story and expressing yourself. But what was the process when you're like, I have a second book in me and here's what it is? How did that come to be?
I feel like it's so, like, weird how it happened because I always said I wanted to kind of make a difference with eating disorder recovery books. I feel like a lot of them, in a sense, are the same or are written by, like, people who are older, so it's important for me to use my voice and be like, "I'm young, so here's what I have to share about being someone who's young in eating disorder recovery." And so I published my first book in late 2023, and I was like, "Okay, what am I gonna write about next?" And I started by just writing stuff out every day, and I ended up one day messaging someone I went to treatment with. She had just gotten out, and we were texting, and I was like, "So, like, what was your recovery click? Like, what made you want to choose recovery?" And that became a deep conversation we were able to have. And I just found myself asking people whenever I had conversations, like, what was your recovery click? Because I was so interested to see like why they chose recovery and what were the steps they took. So then I was like, this would be a good book. Like having people talk about why they chose recovery and, recovery is not linear. So I was like, it's cool to see like what they had to choose and some things I had to sacrifice, some things I had to do. So I ended up interviewing a bunch of people. I had the opportunity to interview people in Australia and Germany, which is really cool. And I just asked them some simple questions and heard their stories, which was beautiful because, again, not one click was the same. And I thought that was really interesting and amazing to see why people were choosing recovery. And so then I was like, okay, I got the interview parts down. What else am I going to write about? And after that, now it did take about 2 years over that to finish the book and have it published and all that. But I just kind of let it flow. I was like, whatever comes to mind, whatever I think fits, I really just want to share what is like I'm supposed to say almost. I just want to let it flow. I want it to happen naturally. So every day I would have another document open and write what's going on in my recovery life, and then I would turn it into something with the recovery click. So that was the next portion of my book. And then the last portion of my book, I had TAs, so therapeutic assistance and treatment. And I was like, let me message them and see if they can be a part of the book. So I was able to message my TAs and ask them what it was like to see our recovery clicks. And I was able to talk to them about that, and that was so cool. Not only to have a part where it's like, okay, this is my recovery click, but then the people who watch this Choose Recovery talk about what that was like. I was like, this is super cool because, it's these people who at first don't even know us and they already believe in us so much to choose recovery that I thought was amazing. So that was another part of my book towards the end. But then I also throughout this process created something called the 721 challenge, and it's basically 7 words 3 times a day. So then you're saying 21 kind words to yourself because it actually takes 7 positive words to cancel out one negative word. And I tied that into a lot of eating disorders and body dysmorphia and how our brain works. And so I talked a lot about that as well in the book, and at the end it just came together, which was super
I
cool.
love that. And I love the 721 challenge. I was thinking a lot about that and how it's there's a beautiful theme in your writing and your process for sort of continual renewal and new ideas and ways to motivate yourself and ways to accept help from other people and different ways to see recovery. It's such a beautiful continual process. And like you said, recovery is not linear, right? Some days are good and some days are not so good. And some time periods are good and some time periods are not so good. And so the tools and skills that you outline in your books, I love the applicability of them. Like I can today, I can get back to telling myself those 7 positive things 3 times a day. Like that's one step I can do to help myself in recovery, or that's one thing I can ask for help from other people, right? That if I'm really struggling and I can't come up with 7 positive things because I'm having such a difficult time, well, I can ask other people, right? And I love that about your writing too, how you're sort of crowdsourcing your wisdom, that you have so much wisdom and then you're sort of sourcing that from so many other people, that it really illustrates how it takes so many people to support ourselves. It's okay to ask for help. It's great to support each other. I just think about all those things when I think about your writing. What kind of response have you had to the 721 challenge when you tell people about it, as you were writing about it, or you were describing it to folks? Like, what do people say about it, and what have you heard other people's experience of it?
Honestly, it's again another cool thing to see. The 721 challenge started because I was watching a sermon and a random, like a few seconds, was like, it takes 7 positive words to cancel out one negative word. And that just stuck with me. Like the rest of the day, I could not stop thinking about how can I tie this into something that can be eating disorder awareness related. And even like if it has to do with anxiety or depression or just struggling with whatever, like how can I get this information out there, but make it something fun, not just me throwing it out there and saying it. So I was writing and I was like, how can I make this a thing? And I was just like, 721 challenge. And then I was like, wait, 7 times 3 is 21. If I was able to get them to say 7 things 3 times a day, that's 21 words. Um, and so then after that, I ended up going around my town and interviewing people. And so I asked them, how many thoughts do you think we have a day? And I'm pretty sure it's like 60 to 80,000. And then what percent do you think those thoughts are negative? And they would say, and I was like, it's about 80%. And then I was like, now how many words do you think it takes for us to cancel out one positive word? And it was super interesting, like not only the answers I got, but people thinking. And then, I've thought it would just be one positive word to cancel out one negative word. And then I was like, wow, it takes 7 positive words. So I started with that, kind of spreading it around town. But then I got to college, and my friends know I published a book. They know that eating disorder awareness is really important to me. So if I ever hear even like my friends say, I can't do this, or this is too hard, or I don't like, I look bad today, I'm just like, oh, well, now you have to say 7 things. And so it is so funny because no matter what my friends and I are doing, we'll like be out in public and I'm just like, shoot, I'm gonna do so bad on this test. Or again, like I don't like my outfit today. This, they're like, Caitlin, you better say 7 positive things now. And it's cool to see that like words like really do have weight and what you say like gets passed on and people listen. And it just became a whole thing in my friend group and they're very supportive about it, which I think is great just because now they're kind of passing it on. So it's crazy to see that my idea, and the more I talk about it and the more I share it, that it really like people listen and that sticks with them. And even like when I'm hanging out with my friends, they'll be like, about to say something negative and they're like, "Wait, I can't say that. Caitlin's gonna make me say 7 positive things." But it's good because then they don't say the negative thing and then they move on with their day. So it really sticks with you. And I always say that it could be something so simple as waking up in the morning, looking in the mirror and be like, I can do this. I'm talented. I'm going to have a great day. I love my hair today. It doesn't even have to be body or look focus, which I think is super cool and important to know because it is awkward to look in the mirror and say those 7 things, but you can start small, you can start simple, and you can even fake it till you make it. But the more you say those 7 positive things, it becomes a habit just like anything else. I feel like people make such a habit of saying bad things about themselves that it's like, okay, let's switch that. Let's use opposite action and now say positive things about ourselves and make that a habit. So I always say, wake up in the morning, after lunch, and then after dinner. And there you go. You wake up saying positive things and you go to bed saying positive things. So I think it's cool that it has really stuck with people.
That's so great. It's so great. And it's such a good point, right? It doesn't have to be about appearance. It doesn't have to be anything to do with eating disorders, like the negative self-talk that so many of us have. And you're right, there's so many thoughts we have during the day, and our thoughts aren't us. They're thoughts. They're just thoughts that can, if we let them, sort of flow down the river of life and leave our consciousness. We don't have to catch them and perseverate on them, which we do so often. So if you catch one, then that helps, I would think, helps you to let it go when you have 7 other things. It's like if you have something in your hand and you have to pick up a whole bunch of other things, you're probably going to not be able to handle the one in your hand. So if you have a negative thought in your hand and you put 7 positive ones, well, there's not a lot of room for the negative one. It really fills that space with that positive energy without being, sort of the ignoring the negative thought or not letting yourself have negative emotions. We don't want that. You're not suggesting that. You're using a really beautiful DBT skill in opposite action. Dialectical behavior therapy, right, is one of the things we use in treatment to help our brains shift from what our brain is thinking into something else. So I love that practical application of it, and it can work so well for so many things, whether you're not going to do well in that test if that's your thought, or you're worried about something at work, or you're worried about something with a friend, or you're worried about something in a different relationship. Like, what can you bring to it that helps you to shift your brain's experience of that set of thoughts? And it's a catchy, fun thing. I could totally imagine your friends being like, Caitlin, what are you going to say now? That's fantastic. What about, we talked about this a little bit last time, but I'm curious to hear your answer now, since you're down the road of recovery a little bit further now. How has recovery continued to evolve as your life has? Like, are there still things that are difficult for you? How do you manage that? And are you increasingly getting like freedoms you didn't have in the eating disorder? A lot of times people talk about that. So what is still a little snarly for you, and what sort of freedoms and joy are you finding new as you journey down the road?
I think I was super nervous coming to college and being away from a lot of my support system. I'm meeting a lot of new people who don't know my story, they don't know my background. So in my mind, I was like, hey, like, what if it's easier to slip and relapse and go back to my eating disorder? And there's a lot of comparison as well. My junior and senior year out of high school, I did homeschool, so I wasn't like around a lot of people. So I was very scared of the unknowns, the news, the challenges, but I was prepared coming into it. Thankfully my story is like shared a lot, so people like slowly found out. So then now my close friends are my new support system, and it's been cool to kind of educate them as well. But I was really nervous. I was scared. I was like, my eating disorder I could tell was sneaking up a little bit, and I wasn't gonna let it like find an opening and swoop in. So I took it day by day, but coming to college was actually very refreshing. I think for the first part, it was almost like a fresh start, which was beautiful. And then another thing was I was scared of the dining hall. I remember that. Just, I didn't have, usually I would have like meals with my mom or something. And I was like, now it's this open place and eating with everyone. That's a little scary. It's intimidating. But then I realized like how normal eating is as it should be. But you come to a dining hall and you see all these people eating, nourishing their body 3 times a day, and then you'll see on campus like people having their snack and this and that, and it just really makes you realize like, wow, I'm supposed to eat. Like this shouldn't be something that I'm like scared to do or nervous that people are going to judge me, because it's genuinely just so normal as it should be. So I thought that was really cool, and I was telling my friends who are in treatment, who are now graduating and nervous to go to college, that honestly, like I just don't really think about it as much anymore. Me and my friends were just like, let's go to the dining hall. That's our source of socializing. We have a meal together, and then we have we have a sweet frog near campus, and they do No Way Wednesdays. And so every Wednesday, me and my friends are like, do you want to go to Sweet Frog? And it's really just become traditions almost. And in treatment, we learn about the memories that come with food. And I think that's something college has had. I've just had so many great conversations and memories tied to being in the dining hall or going out to eat or getting Sweet Frog. So really reframing your thoughts on food. And I think another part of that is a lot of people in college are unapologetically themselves. And that's super cool to see, because truly people, they dress how they want, they like act how they want. Like people really just don't care. Like they're going to be friends with who they enjoy being around. And so I learned that as well, that I'm like, it's okay what I look like, it's okay what I eat. Like I can eat when I'm hungry. So I feel like college was seen as something very intimidating. Also, the freshman 15 diet culture. But in my second book, talked about that, because there's just like a lot of that is false and based off like a social construction and diet culture and what people think. They take this small idea and they run with it. So I just tied myself into truths, I tied myself into good friends, and I've created memories with food and my body and just enjoying being on campus. And yeah, so really it's seems scary at first, but if you take it day by day, it's not that bad. And you kind of find your routine, you find your schedule, and it's been great being here at college sharing my story as
Ah,
well.
awesome. That's that. I love the feeling of movement in your story of the things that you were worried about, which totally makes sense. And then seeing them become like, yeah, food is a normal part of nourishment and it's part of socializing and you're able to find joy. And I can just hear in your stories things that the eating disorder would totally have wanted to steal from you and probably took from you before, and now you have them, and that's really cool. And I can imagine that, you know, as people listen to your story and listen to other people's stories and sort of continue hopefully to see that hope in there for them. What's next for you? Any more books? What's next on the horizon for you?
I feel like another beautiful thing to like tie into your last question as well, and kind of now with what's coming next, is I'm studying human services with an addictions focus, and then a psychology minor here at college. And I feel like that's super cool, just because like I'm taking what I went through in my story and I want to become an eating disorder therapist. And also I've been learning so much within my classes, including eating disorders. So I feel like that's really cool. I am a freshman, so finishing my 4 years of undergrad, almost completed with year one, so that's good. And then after that, I don't know, I feel like I'll kind of see with the books and stuff, see how it goes with the second one, and then if any ideas pop up, I am working on a fiction book, maybe that ties into like eating disorder awareness, or like a more positive children's book about growth and stuff. So lots of ideas. But yeah, just finishing up college, taking it day by day, and we'll see what happens from
That's
there.
great. I have no doubt that you're going to have a ton of ideas, and whatever ideas you choose to pursue, I know that they're going to be a gift, a contribution to people in recovery. And as we talked about, to just more broadly, that your ideas and your energy are relatable and help people to really really try to be their best self, right? Be their best, most peaceful, connected self. So for our last question, and I know you answered this last time because I ask everybody this on the podcast, but I'm still going to ask you because you, as we talked about before, are further down the road in your recovery. What would you say now to somebody listening who thinks like, yeah, that sounds great, Katelyn, but I can't find my recovery click. I don't know what it is. I can't find it. I can't do this. I don't think it's possible for me. What would you say to that person?
I love this question. I feel like it's such a good question, especially because I asked myself the same stuff before treatment. Even the beginning of treatment, I was like, I can't do this. I'm not going to be able to recover. I didn't like, I always said that I didn't even like really know what eating disorders were. So it's like, how can I recover when I don't even understand? And truly, it's so important to take it day by day and give yourself grace. I feel like that's very important. I might have said this last time, but things start screaming when they're dying. And I feel like that's something I kind of have to tell myself, is that eating disorder is going to be really loud when you're starting to kill it, and you're going to be like, oh, I want to give up. It's too loud. But the thing is, you got to ride that wave, and the wave's going to get really strong at first, but then it's smooth sailing after that. And doesn't mean that, okay, after you get over that big wave, it's going to be easy peasy from there. But truly sitting there and finding the truths, I find like journaling and writing so important, and writing out, okay, this is what my eating disorder says, but this is the truth. So if your eating disorder, because it's not you telling yourself, I can't do this, it's your eating disorder. Your eating disorder doesn't want you to recover. So it's going to tell you, I can't do this. You can't find your recovery click. But if you sit there and get another chair, put it in front of you, and you kind of make your eating disorder sit there. I know it sounds silly, but we did this in treatment. And then you tell your eating disorder what you want it to hear. Don't let your eating disorder tell you what it wants you to hear. You sit there, you say, I can do this. I may not know what my recovery click is, but it could be as simple as, I want to do this. I can do this. I don't want to be in treatment, and I don't want to be fighting myself every day. Like, I don't want to be a grandma struggling with an eating disorder. So this is why I'm gonna recover. And again, that's what's so cool about the recovery click, is that it can be anything, and it can be like, I put in quotes, as small as you want it, because I feel like any recovery click is very important. And you just tell yourself every day, I can do this. And it's not going to be easy, but it's so special and it's so amazing, especially as someone like a few years down the road, which is so weird to say, a few years in the recovery process, and seeing how much I've grown and even how my recovery clicks have changed. You find a new reason every day, honestly. And yeah, take it day by day. Tell yourself you can do it. Remember that things start screaming when they're dying, and ride that
Oh,
wave.
awesome. Such wisdom. Katelyn, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm so excited about your new book, The Recovery Click. Thank you for sharing your time and your story and your light with the world.
Thank you so much for
You're
having me.
welcome. If you enjoyed today's episode of Piecemeal, please subscribe, rate, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Learn more about us at emilyprogram.com or find the Emily Program on social media. Piecemeal is produced by the amazing podcast team at the Emily Program. Until next time, take care. Thanks for listening.